Each and every year, it's the best show on television, and the trailer just dropped, coming this September. Well, you're going to get Kansas City and you're going to get Philadelphia in a Super Bowl rematch. That's week 2, and KC hoping that it's better than 40-22. Eagles, it's part of their schedule that represents the 4th most difficult by strength of schedule of opponents' win percentage a season ago, but built for the task. Philadelphia, the 4th hardest. Back with the Mac as Charles Davis joins our conversation as well to explore those hardest schedules the NFL has doled out. I don't know how you get dragged for 18 weeks and end up with the hardest schedule, but such is the life of the New York Giants, and I just work here. What does that gauntlet, Mac, mean for this quarterback, whoever it's going to be, for this head coach, and for this general manager, with all hanging in the balance in New York?
Adversity. They're going to face adversity to start off the season. And that says a lot for a team that only won 3 games in 2024. But if you look at the gauntlet of a schedule the Giants will have to face, it feels like they won the entire Super Bowl a year ago. And you talk about a new regime in terms of some of the personnel that they added. Regardless, they're going to have a new quarterback from what we saw in 2024. They added some new pieces on the offensive side and the defensive side. But Charles, to get the gauntlet going like this, they're going to be battle tested. And it's up to Brian Daboll to keep his locker room together, not to mention the fan base, because if they're not careful, they can be 0-4 before they get to the 5th game against the New Orleans Saints. And that's not the ideal start for an organization that has winning aspirations. Regardless of what has happened in the past, this is the organization that has been built on winning and being competitive. But to start their season off, week 1 is very, very important, because that's the week of unknowns. If they can find a way to slip up and beat a team in which we will probably say would be the favorites and the Commanders, then things can change. But that is the best opportunity for them to kind of get this thing going in the right direction.
Send a message, shot over the bow. CD, how do you reconcile with what we see in front of the Giants right now?
Well, you know, B-Mac laid it out very, very well. I mean, that first gauntlet makes you wonder who they upset in the league office. Howard Katz does the schedule, is supposed to be retiring. This is not a retirement gift that he gave the Giants. They must not have given him the right, lazy boy or whatever gift. But here's the thing. Remember the first year, B-Mac, that Brian Daboll took over, and that roster just wasn't very good? Somehow they managed to get to the playoffs. I'm not suggesting they're going to the playoffs, okay? I'm not there, all right? But what Brian Daboll brings to the table is competitiveness, is competition, is fighting through adversity, getting off the deck and doing things. Look, Mr. Mara said it best. His patience is awfully thin. We know that. I don't know that he meant they have to go to the playoffs when he looks at the roster and what they're doing, but I think he expects them to be competitive. And that's what's going to be the key to me, especially as you pointed out, in those first 3 or 4 games. I mean, 2 divisional games and in Kansas City on Sunday Night Football. You can't just be 0-3. It has to be a good 0-3. All right? And that's what Daboll's going to bring to the table, and that's what he's going to present to his team, although he won't say anything about being a good 0-3. He'll be talking about how they have to win these games. But the rest of us, I think we're being realistic. Can you come out of that looking like a team that has a chance to be improved?
Patience being the operative word there for the young quarterback as well, sitting behind 2 veterans. And if it does get noisy and things get tough, you're going to have a fan base that wants to see what could be the quarterback of the future. Second toughest strength of schedule based off of last year's opponent's win percentage, the Charter franchise. Fellas, you know where my heart is. I've fallen victim to excitement many a time before, but we're coming in more measured this year, that I promise. What do you see, CD, when you look at the cadence of Chicago's schedule?
I see them, there's plenty of percussion, early in it, right? Minnesota on Monday Night Football, the Detroit Lions on the road, Dallas in Game 3. B-Mac talked about a gauntlet for the Giants, about the Bears right out of the gate. But then you're talking about how the beats of the season goes. How about at Washington? Then 2 weeks later, you get the Ravens and the Bengals back-to-back. Then you go down into 12, and week 11, you get the Vikings at Minnesota, and then you get Pittsburgh at home. And then you get Black Friday against the Eagles. How about those 3 in a row? Oh, well, you feel good about that? Guess what? You're at Green Bay week 14. So 4 in a row now that we're talking about massive games, massive implications. Joe, I'm glad that you have that, that you've tempered things. I think your roster is better this year. I think Ryan Poles has won the offseason in a big way in Chicago, both in free agency and in the draft. He won the sweepstakes in getting Ben Johnson as the head coach. Now can they put it all together? Because there were high hopes last year, as you pointed out. I don't see any reason not to have high hopes for this year, but we got to see if the Ben Johnson magic takes hold early and if Caleb Williams is able to make that jump under new direction.
And see, the last name you mentioned, Caleb Williams, I'm going to focus my attention, my statement on Caleb Williams, because this puts more pressure on Caleb Williams. No, the schedule is very, very tough. But the last time I checked in the NFL, there's no easy out anyway. For you to get to an opportunity to hoist a Sticky Lombardi, you're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to earn it.
There's no easy route.
Yes.
When you look at the toughest schedule to the easiest schedule, the disparity is about 10 percentage points.
Yes.
Everybody's good in this league.
And the thing about this schedule for Chicago, it's ugly. But you get an opportunity to identify who you are week 1 and week 2. If they're able to take care of their business, they're 2-0, but they're 2-0 in the division as well. That's very, very important. And to your point, CD, this roster is much improved from what we witnessed a year ago. This coaching staff is better than what we saw a year ago as well, along with your quarterback having a year of experience in his career. So this puts a lot of pressure on Caleb Williams because you talked about the most coveted offensive name. It's been Ben Johnson over the last 3 years. And you were able to land him to be your head coach to work hand in hand with your quarterback and the entire offense. You got to find a way to get it done, regardless of how it looks. The last time I checked in the NFL, no one cares about the labor pains. You still got to deliver the baby.
I think that you make a great point there about the quarterback, one who I see as maniacally committed to greatness and trying to achieve it. He's going to have plenty of opportunities to prove it this season when you look at that Bears schedule, the second toughest in the NFL. The Lions tied for the Bears with second toughest. Obviously, they share divisional schedule, and the crossover comes with the NFC East, the AFC North. Game 17 comes against the NFC West. Mac, I've asked you the question, so I'm going CD first here. When you look at the Lions and the way they're constructed this year, personnel's still fantastic, but how do you assess all the scheme that walked out of the door?
Yeah, that's always a difficult part of it, but I do believe that with Dan Campbell as a head coach, part of what he did in replacing these coordinators is making sure scheme stayed in place. John Morton is taking over for Ben Johnson. The difference is, will he have the same wizardry in calling plays and figuring out situations and being 2 or 3 jumps ahead, similar to Kyle Shanahan in his prime, right? When those guys are scheming at their best, good luck, defensive coordinators. Then flip it over to the defensive side. Aaron Glenn goes to New York to take over the Jets, but he just elevates within. Kelvin Shepard, former NFL linebacker, has been with the Lions for a while, has been absorbing all of this. Scheme change is not going to be that much of a difference for the players. There'll be the tweaks of the individual coaches, likes, dislikes, that sort of thing, what they may lean on as the season goes on. But the players don't have to learn anything different. And B-Mac, when I look at the Lions schedule, isn't it fun to see all those parentheses after games, meaning Sunday night football, Thursday night football, Monday night football, Christmas, Thanksgiving. We're talking marquee games all the way through. The Detroit Lions, remember, it wasn't that long ago their marquee game was, hey, we get to host a Thanksgiving game every single year.
That was it.
And that was all she wrote, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, see you down the road. Now, it's big games all the time. And fortunately for them, they've had to start doing this over the last couple of years. So similar to all the best teams in the league, they're not worried that their routine is disrupted. They understand how to play to a routine that is uneven throughout the season. You're not playing every week Sunday at 1.
And the thing about what Dan Campbell has built there in Detroit, they have embraced the attention that has come with them winning, and they understand what's at stake for them. And you made key points about what Dan Campbell decided to do when he lost both coordinators. He promoted from within. The individuals that he brought up, they understand the Detroit Lion way. They understand how to go about their business on either side of the football field. The only thing that I'm watching to see, you talked about the wizardry that we saw with Ben Johnson. When will we see some of the the extras that made Detroit such a fun team to watch on the offensive side.
You want Penei Sewell throwing the rock on the outside?
The tackle screens and things like that, because that added a pizzazz to their offense that made it difficult for defenders to prepare for them. And not to mention the aggressive nature that we saw with Aaron Glenn calling plays on the defensive side as well. But the most important thing, though, the identity is still there, the DNA, football DNA is still there, and the personnel, because this is still a very, very talented roster, especially on the offensive side of the football field.
And you get Hutch
Hey,
back.
Joe, before you go on, let me just jump in there because B-Mac hit it. When are we going to see the extras? Well, maybe if Dan Campbell adds a third venti coffee with 3 shots of espresso, because he does 2 every morning. If he adds a third one in, he may very well turn to his coordinators and give me the old Siwash special and let's go get it. So let's find out.
The triple red eye, I believe that would be. We'll see how it works in the AM and throughout the season for Dan Campbell. Just a third time in the last 15 years that a team has lost both coordinators to head coaching jobs. The previous 2 wild card round bow-outs, likely more correlation than causation, but something certainly to keep an eye on. The Eagles, meantime, have the 4th hardest schedule in the NFL, going to be the first team in NFL history with 10 games against playoff teams from the previous season. 7 of those 10 come on the road. Mac, any issue here, or still biggest bully on the block, favorite in every game?
Yeah, this was expected. You know, anytime you win the championship, clearly you're going to have a very, very difficult schedule based on the success you had the year before. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, one thing they really have to adapt to extremely fast. Yes, their schedule is very, very difficult based on the percentages. But every time you step on the football field, because you were able to hoist the sticky Lombardi, you're getting the opposing team's best effort, because they all had to watch you hoist the sticky Lombardi in New Orleans. So that makes the game for them bigger. So that target that you already had on your back and your chest is bigger, and you have to go about that mindset, with that mindset week in and week out. But once again, when you look at this roster, CD, Joe, name me a more talented roster. I mean, yes, they lost a few pieces, but they've added as well, along with some of the other moves that they made via the draft, because the draft was, for them, was a bang-bang. Howie did another masterful job in adding talent through the draft, and that's the most unique thing about this team. When you look at some of the free agents, no question, Saquon Barkley was a big-time addition. You traded for A.J. Brown. But look at the homegrown players they drafted in the organization. They've been able to develop, and they've gotten the most out of those said players. It's no surprise about the success that we've seen from Philadelphia. And as long as they continue to have that talent on the football field along with the coaching, they're going to be in good shape.
Health was on their side. Health is the thing that will keep them on the rails, and can be said for all 32, but this Philadelphia team built to keep on running. We're going to run further as well. Straight ahead, nothing comes easy in the NFL, but they'll take any help they can get. We assess the softest schedules next on HQ. Back on CBS Sports HQ, schedules are released, and we're looking at the flip side of that difficulty coin, your easiest schedules in the season to come. Mac, what was the easiest football game you ever played in?
I'm still waiting on that one.
Exactly the point here. It is a difficult game played by hard men. These 4 teams filled with all sorts of talent will have the easiest road to their eventual playoffs. Playoffs not made for everybody. The Niners certainly underperformed to expectation a year ago. Bryant McFadden and Charles Davis here to offer their thoughts. The Niners are reworking that identity a little bit. The household names that we've come to know and love that got so close to Super Bowl attaining that long-term goal, some of them are not there anymore, Mac. What does this schedule mean as they try and find themselves in that identity this season?
Well, it means a lot for San Francisco, because the issue for San Francisco a year ago was more about the injury bug, right? Health. Health played a big part in them not being as successful as we thought they would be based on the returning talent they had on the team along with the coaching. But when you look at this schedule, and I understand based on the percentages, it's one of the easier schedules. But if you're San Francisco, if they can stay healthy, Joe, starting with some of their prime time players.
If he can stay healthy, exactly.
Yeah. And Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, getting Brandon Ayuk back, if they can stay healthy, I mean, they have an opportunity, CD, to be one of those teams that we've seen in years past finish from worst to first when you look at the year before and then, of course, the current season. But it's all about health for them. And you look at the way how they get the schedule rolling, that's a great opportunity to send a sign to the NFL world. We're back. You have your quarterback back in place. Hopefully he will have a new deal. But having a healthy Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams, those two individuals, in my opinion, they're two of the most important players when you look at non-quarterback positions on the offensive side and the defensive side. So hopefully having those two guys back, along with what they're saying is one of the easier schedules, can actually help get things started in the right direction compared to what we did not see in 2024.
And B-Mac, following along what you're talking about, we've showed 4 teams to start off with the 4 easiest schedules, right? Out of those 4, right now, sitting here today, it feels like only one of them really has a chance to get right and really be a playoff team. All right, that's kind of how it looks now. We know how this can change. And to your point about worst to first, I believe 19 of the last 21 seasons, we've had at least one team go from worst to first. Do you know that last year we didn't have that? So we're due. So could it be San Francisco? To your point about how their schedule is shaped up with the expectations of this team, if they get healthy and we think they're going to be, the quarterback gets his contract, those first 4 games seem crucial to me. Come out of the gate, get right, win those first 4. And then after that, you know what happens, B-Mac, in terms of momentum. And you say you've never played an easy game. Don't tell me that. You jumped on somebody in high school. You couldn't wait. And by the way, you told your backups all week, make sure you're ready to go because we'll be out early in this one, okay? So you'll get to play. But San Francisco's trying their best to get out of the gate strong and announce that, hey, we're back and we want to compete with the Rams. We want to compete with Seattle and an ascending Arizona team.
And to your point, CD, about the first 4 games for San Francisco, it's safe to say, as we see it right now, guys, they will be the favorites going into those first 4 ball games. Starting off with Seattle, that's the new Sam Darnold era with Mike McDonald in year 2. But I would say, if I had to throw my opinion out, San Francisco probably would be the favorites. The same can be said for the Saints and everything that they have going on with the turnover. Maybe that wild card could be Arizona week 3. Clearly, they should be the favorites week 4 against Jacksonville. So that's a great 4-game start potentially for San Francisco if, number one, they're healthy and they take care of their business.
It's always an interesting team, and the leadership there is long-standing. We'll see if they can turn it around in a short amount of time. Mac, we saw the Rivals ratings. He's still on the top-rated cornerbacks of all time. So there were 8? Did Travis Hunter bump you down to 8?
Yeah, Travis brought me down to 8.
There were some easy games in there, CD, to your point. We're going to move right to number 3 because number 2 is represented by the New Orleans Saints, and I'm not going to make you fellas do that. So let's keep it rolling here to the New England Patriots, the 3rd most friendly schedule. AFC team with the easiest schedule has finished with a winning record every year since the league expanded to 17 games. So again, I'm not sure if that indicates what's to come here for this team that added on the left side to protect the franchise quarterback and has a new head coach. Total sum of the parts, Mac, applied to this schedule, you see what?
Man, I see a competitive team. Number one, I respect their head coach and Mike Vrabel. I feel like he should have never been let go by Tennessee, but of course, others felt differently. But when you look at what he's done in the National Football League, being able to get more from less in terms of rosters, this is a team in terms of the offseason regimen. They won free agency, they won the draft. This team is more talented than what we saw a year ago, and I do believe we will see Drake May take that step in the right direction in terms of development and being more consistent. But everything that is surrounding Drake May on the offensive side is better, and the same can be said defensively as well. They had the most money in terms of cap money available, and they spent wisely. They did a great job identifying ways to improve their team in the draft, and now seeing this schedule, especially the first game is at home. And one thing about New England over the last few years, especially a year ago, week 1, they oftentimes will surprise you. Remember what they did to Cincinnati? Gave them a black eye week 1, surprised everyone. Now, if you're able to get the Raiders, a team that has a new coaching regime in place, along with new members as well, you have to like that makeup to start the season off for the New England Patriots, along with year 2 with Drake May being your starting quarterback.
Agreed on all points, and Mike Vrabel talked about winning the offseason in terms of free agency, and they did that pretty well in terms of names that they got added to the defensive side of the ball. That's where they really won. Offensive side, they had to find playmakers. As you know, B-Mac, they haven't had anyone to scare anyone on offense. And this is no disrespect to anyone, but I don't know that there's a defense coordinator over the last 3 to 4 seasons that lost a night's sleep worried about what New England could do to them. Did they respect what they could do? Yes. Were they fearful? No. And in this league, if you don't have guys that scare you, then you can forget it. That means you're going to be in every game. You mentioned the Cincinnati opener last year. They ran through them, right? Beat Cincinnati in the opener. Cincinnati was terrible that day and still had a chance. Okay, so New England wasn't going to run away and hide from you. But I love what Mike Vrabel brings to the table. To me, their season comes down to offensive line, offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. They were abysmal last year. Can that offensive line be improved enough to help Drake May and their new playmakers on offense?
Gave up one of the worst rush rates in the league last season, and Will Campbell was the early selection there at 4. I love the conviction he speaks with at 21 years old, and you also love when the head coach has already given him pass rep looks. You see, they're physical already in New England. We'll see what it looks like when we add it all up. Cam Ward and the Titans have been alluded to here, the top overall pick and the first quarterback obviously selected in this most recent draft. They have the 4th easiest schedule, but CD, we know how fate sort of works against rookie quarterbacks, and the story that's been told over the history of this league, the growing pains, the learning crucible that he will be in. When you look at Cam Ward and all that needs to change in Tennessee, what does this schedule do for the young man?
Well, I mean, look, you're going to Denver in the rare era to begin with a second quarterback who had a fantastic first season in Bo Nix. That's not a great opener, as you would think, going on the road like that. Here come the Rams week 2, Colts, and so on and so forth. But let's move past the schedule. This is Brian Callahan's second year as the head coach there. I love the fact that they resisted the urge to make a ton of changes, B-Mac, on his coaching staff because they didn't have a great year. I think sometimes that happens with young coaches or their first time. But you can see the experience that Brian Callahan, having grown up in the game, his father, Bills, had great experience coaching in this league. He was there for the council. He was consigliere for him. And guess what? He didn't make a ton of wholesale changes. That way the continuity stays there, teaching the guys that they have coming back. Getting Cam Ward as the new face of the franchise, this isn't just for this year, guys. They opened a new stadium, I think, in 2 seasons. They hope to have him established and hope that he's their new Steve McNair when that new stadium opens, and they can have plenty of hope down the road. But remember this is well the weird part. And B-Mac, you talked about opening day being strange for everyone. The last time the Titans had a rookie quarterback that started week 1, it was Marcus Mariota. Do you know what he did week 1? He threw 4 touchdown passes and the Titans won. Can Cam Ward recreate Marcus Mariota's week 1 rookie season? Now, wouldn't that be one for the books?
No question. I don't remember exactly who Marcus played against his first game where he threw 4 touchdowns, but I highly doubt it was the defense that Cam Ward is going to see in week 1 against the Denver Broncos, because when you look at what Denver did last year defensively, CD, they were a very, very stout unit in terms of putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks and having sound coverage in the back end. So this is a great test for Cam Ward week 1, knowing that he's going to face off against one of the high-level defenses that we saw in 2024. But I want to focus more of my attention on Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan had an opportunity to become the head coach for Tennessee because of what he did with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, working hands-on with their offense, working hands-on with the quarterback. Well, we kind of gave Brian Callahan guys a pass because Will Levis wasn't his guy. He inherited Will Levis, but it didn't work out. Okay, that wasn't his guy. You had an opportunity, Brian Callahan, to do your due diligence, to study every quarterback that was available for this draft, and you picked the guy that you love. You picked the guy that had a talent that fits your coaching method. Now let's see exactly what you can do. And if you're Cam Ward, you're coming into a situation where the organization needs you. But you don't have to go out and play hero ball week in and week out. Because if that is the mentality for a young quarterback, he's going to struggle. Allow the others that are surrounding you to do what they've been paid to do as well, which is make plays. But this is a lot, for me, this puts more pressure on Brian Callahan because it didn't work out with Will Levis. Well, it's a pass. That wasn't his guy. For Cam Ward, this is your guy. So we expect to see growth and development similar to what we saw with Drake May in New England compared to how he started the season and how he finished, because we saw growth with Drake May. The same can be said for Cam Ward. That's the expectations, in my opinion.
It's the Buccaneers at Raymond James Stadium, a matchup of the top 2 picks in the 2015 draft.
Okay.
Jameis and Mariota, round 1 there went to Mariota. A perfect passer rating in his NFL debut, which goes to show let's not overreact to anything we see, even the schedules. Charles Davis, Bryant McFadden, appreciation as always, gentlemen, as we move our party along and we take things on the road. We're talking travel. LA charged as frequent flyers, but what might that mean for their playoff hopes? We go there next. Don't want to spoil your summer, but September can't come soon enough. The schedule released on Wednesday and the road ahead. It all begins in week 1 with that Thursday night matchup on September 4th. Your full slate coming on September 7th. In with reaction to all that we saw across the 32, Ran Carthon, Bryant McFadden here. And fellas, let's dive in with our very favorites there in week 1. Mac, you assess the full schedule. What's the one that you cannot wait to see?
Thursday night. I want to get it cracking the first game of the season. But guys, the reason why I'm really hyped about this Thursday night opening night matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Eagles. Number one, 2 divisional foes that hate each other. Consistently, the hate has been well documented. Number 2, we know exactly what we should see from Philly when you look at the well-assembled roster returning, adding a few additions here or there, not to mention playing at home. This will be the first time their home fans get an opportunity, Rand, to see them on the grass since hoisting the Sticky Lombardi back in February. You know the atmosphere is going to be electric. But let's transition to the Dallas Cowboys. I don't want to wait until late September, October to see Dallas against a divisional foe. I want to see what they're looking like with this new team Thursday night. What George Pickens is going to look like in the huddle with CeeDee Lamb. What is this healthy Dak Prescott going to look like throwing to 2 wide receiver ones? What is Tyler Booker going to look like against Jalen Carter? These things will be answered on Thursday night, and it makes it even better. It's a divisional matchup.
You still got the GPS coordinates?
I think so.
It's still GPS for you?
Yeah.
George Pickens scores?
George Pickens scores. He's still my dog.
Just George Pickens scoring in
Even though he's not in the Steelers uniform, we still got a good relationship. That's my guy.
Rand, your favorite in week 1?
Well, since B-Mac stole mine, I'll give you that one. And B-Mac and I would count on the same wavelength. But I'm going to go with Baltimore versus Buffalo. Out the gate, you have your past 2 NFL MVPs, and now you're up against each other in week 1. And this could very well be the AFC Championship match that we see later on in the year. So now you have Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, and this is out of the gate. And think about how long these teams are going to have to prepare for each other. This is going to be a slugfest out the gate, and these are the type of matchups that you want to see very early to see what your team is made of.
It's going to be a great one. You make a great point there, too. Usually it's 4 days of prep for these games that these guys are getting ready for. This is nearly 4 months of prep to focus on one opponent right in front of you, and such a great one there. I know we do not forget Lamar Jackson did not attend NFL honors after word broke that he did not get his MVP. I don't know if he's still salty. I still feel a way about it. Let's talk winners and losers. He did not win that one, but we are winners when we look at these schedules. Your biggest winner, the team that's looking at their schedule saying, man, you win-loss this thing and you find 10+. Who's your winner?
The New England Patriots.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at a team that was below average in terms of wins a year ago, right? The turnover, firing Gerard Mayo, bringing in Mike Vrabel, changing the guards in terms of the roster. But looking at their schedule, it's set up nicely for the New England Patriots to really surprise a lot of naysayers, right? You look at the first ball game, the Raiders. You get the Raiders at home. Remember how they surprised everyone a year ago, first game in Cincy. Most of the masses felt like that would be an easy, not an easy one, but a win for Cincy. Guess what? They gave the Bengals a raccoon eye. They blackened that eye. Of course, everything derailed after that. But when you look at this week 1 matchup, that's a winnable game. And then when you look at the changeover with the Miami Dolphins, that's a winnable game, even though they're playing down in Miami. And then, of course, you get my Pittsburgh Steelers, and right now, there's a lot of question marks concerning that team. So if you're the New England Patriots, along with the roster that you have assembled, along with Mike Vrabel, a guy who I believe is a well-respected coach in terms of being able to do more with less. And like I said, this is a talented roster from top to bottom compared to what they did not have a year ago. I love the makeup for the New England Patriots, especially being able to get that first game at home against a winnable team in the Raiders.
We'll see if there's any familiarity there with the man who made his bones as a Patriot, now leading that franchise forward. Rand, I know you're going with familiarity for your winner, taking us back to a building you know well.
Yeah, I'm going with San Francisco. And you're coming off of a team that dealt with some injuries, lost some key guys at key points of the season, and had to drudge along, if you will. I didn't want to be disrespectful, but drudge along, if you will, with certain guys. And now you're getting a healthy roster. You're retooling this defense. And like B-Mac mentioned, you come out of the gate, you're playing one of your biggest rivals in the division in Seattle, and you're on the road. And so now they're going to be equipped to make a run. And now, again, you go back to what John Lynch has done this offseason, and he's retooling that defense. They lost some guys, but then they're trying to get back dominant up front, which is what this San Francisco defense is known for. And then offensively, you get a healthy George Kittle, you get a healthy Brandon Ayuk, and you got that man in the backfield, CMC, and you get all of these weapons back for Brock Purdy. And I think this offense is going to be built to make a long run this season.
We just saw that schedule. It is one that only possesses 3 teams on it that were playoff teams a year ago. 4 games with 3 opponents that were playoff teams a year ago. One of the easiest schedules we saw released here on Wednesday. Let's talk about our biggest loser, because on the flip side of that ease coin is a whole bunch of difficulty. Ran, I'm coming right back out to you. The team that's looking at the thing saying, this is a steep hill to climb.
Yeah, and I'm looking at 2 teams right here. I'm looking at Cleveland, and I'm looking at the Giants. And here's why. These schedules are very, very tough. The NFL season is very tough. We all know that. B-Mac and I, we both know that. However, we're talking about 2 teams here who have a lot of questions at the most key position on the football field, and that's the quarterback position. And these guys are going to be forced to face a gauntlet schedule. So you're looking at these 2 teams that could very well be picking near the top again next year. I hope not for those guys in their sake. But these 2 teams here have been dealt a tough blow to have 2 of the toughest schedules in this season.
And I'm right there with you, especially with the New York Giants. Keep their schedule up real quick for me. The NFL is all about matchups, and most importantly, the quarterback matchup. That tells a lot in terms of which team is set up nicely to potentially win or lose. You look at the first 4 ball games for the Giants, the quarterback matchup is in favor of the opposing team. I mean, that is a gauntlet, and if you happen to be 0-4 by the time you get to New Orleans, that is going to be the most defining moment for their season, because if you lose to New Orleans, when do you see a win?
I'm doing what you just did. I'm trying to find the games where they're going to have the better quarterback, and might be any one of the 3. I find it week 5 against the Saints, and I potentially find it week 16 against the Vikings, because that's just an unknown asset right now.
And by that time, with the magic that Kevin O'Connell has been able to do with whoever has been playing quarterback, that matchup might be in favor. The quarterback matchup might be in favor of the Minnesota Vikings. So for a team, like you mentioned, Cleveland and New York, they were bad a year ago. The schedule makers did them no favors at all in assembling their schedule, especially how difficult the start of the season is. So for the fans for Cleveland and New York, you got to have the faith the size of David when he went to slay the giant and Goliath, because this is a tall, daunting task for them to get things rolling in the early month of September.
5.5, the win total for the Giants, according to our friends in the desert. Mac's going to be leaning towards that under. I'm sure we'll have a full win total extravaganza coming up, but we are focused on the schedule. And this is the day that always brings up maybe my favorite offseason stat, because it identifies hope. It recognizes the teams that didn't make it a year ago. Since 1990, 35 years, every year, 4 teams or more that didn't make the playoffs the year prior made it the following. It is the parity in the middle of this league. You have the standard bearers, you have the middle, and you have the bottom. The middle of the league might shift this year, Mac. Where do you see a shift? Give me a team that didn't make the playoffs last year that's going to make it this year.
I'm ready to stir the pot early in May. I talked about this team earlier in terms of being a winner with the schedule. I'm going right back to the water with the New England Patriots. I do believe this is a team that they have the opportunity, guys, to make the playoffs, something that they had no chance of doing a year ago. And here's why. When you look at the coach and Mike Vrabel, it's safe to say, worst case scenario, he is the 2nd best coach in their division. Yes, I'm taking Mike Vrabel over Mike McDonald in Miami in terms of the consistency and being able to do more with less. Secondly, I would say worst case scenario, they have the 2nd best roster in the AFC East. When you look at the additions they've made via free agency and the additions they made throughout the draft, from top to bottom, On paper, granted, we got to see it play out on the grass, Rand, but right now, as we see it today, it's safe to say they have, worst case scenario, the second best roster, and the number one roster would be the Buffalo Bills. That plays a big part, in my opinion, about this team in New England being able to shake up some things and find a way to get into the playoffs. Because if you look at their schedule, Rand, I love the start of their schedule. I mean, they have an opportunity to gain a lot of confidence and gain a lot of morale and build chemistry and rhythm there. And this sets up nicely for their second-year quarterback in Drake May. So that is the one team that I'm looking at right now, guys. They had no shot of making the playoffs a year ago, but this is a team that could easily find themselves playing in mid-January when it's all said and done.
Well, I'll say this, if for nothing else, Mike Vrabel needs to bring B-Mac in the building to give the team a pep talk. It's not as fiery of a speech I've heard come out of that Patriots building in some time. And I agree with you there, B-Mac, just in terms of them adding Mike Vrabel. And then you bring Josh McDaniels in to coordinate his offense with a young quarterback, and you have weapons. So I like that. I like what you're saying, and I would have taken these guys as well for me. But if we're talking about, for me, going from a non-playoff team to a playoff team, I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to go back to the well, and I'm going to take the San Francisco 49ers. Because, again, for all the aforementioned things that I spoke about just a second ago, you're getting all your healthy playmakers back. And then you still have Kyle Shanahan. And then you add Robert Saleh back to this defense. And we know what he was capable of doing and what he was able to do when he was a defensive coordinator there. So you're getting all your key weapons back, and you're getting younger and fresher on that defense. And I will go out. I'm going to pull a B-Mac here. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to say that Chris Kaserik is going to have this defense and this front flying on all cylinders up front. And don't be surprised if you see this team as a top 5 teams in terms of sacks and tackles behind the line of scrimmage this year.
See if those two can make the jump forward. Mac, who's catching the ball in New England?
You got Stephon Diggs. You got a lot of guys there.
Who else?
To be determined. We're not worrying about that.
Disrespect to the Miami Dolphins is all I say.
Let the Pat fans have their moment I just gave them.
It is a wonderful
And
day.
I can tell you this much. You talked about Miami. Which defense do you trust more right now?
Anybody that's going out there with Mike Vrabel.
No
I'll say
question.
that to you.
Defense win championships.
You know he had to get one of those in. Ran Carthon, Bryant McFadden, many thanks as always. Gentlemen, here's a look at your key dates upcoming in the NFL. Opening night. Come on now. Thursday, September 4th, a primetime matchup. The trade deadline always looming in November as contenders try and load up, and those who see their fate in the wall maybe let a few guys go. Playoffs, January 10th. Super Bowl 60. Got a nice ring to it. February 9. History has a way of writing itself with the NFL on CBS, but the masterful narration of those moments belongs to him, the voice of CBS Sports, Jim Nantz. Jim, it's always great to be with you, my friend.
Thank you, Joe. One of my favorite days of the year. I know people get giddy about a lot of things, but for me, when the NFL schedule is released and I get a pretty good idea of what those months are going to look like in the fall and week by week, get excited about the matchups. You never know which games are going to land in our hands, and I'm just thrilled upon just receiving this news earlier today to see a really strong schedule ahead for the NFL on CBS.
Certainly so. More Sunday games with the NFL on CBS than any other network, and we're always so privileged to have you as our guiding light and leading the way. And as you allude to there, for fans, it's sort of win-loss day. You go through the schedule, you try and prognosticate a final record if you're going to be in the playoffs or not. For you, it's travelogue, it's marching orders. What do you see when you look at that grand story of the season to come?
And I'm really looking, Joe. I'm looking for matchups. I'm looking for the most marquee matchups, hoping that they stayed in our allotment as the AFC primary broadcaster. Of course, we have these cross flexes, as you call them, taking games out of the NFC package. No better example than that. Then right off the bat, week 1, we have the doubleheader. You know, we alternate Sundays with Fox. But this year on week 1, September 7th, we'll have the national 425 window with Detroit at Green Bay. It was a great matchup. The Lions and Packers have had some storybook meetings in the last few years, and to see the Lions and Dan Campbell and Jared Goff going against Green Bay and Jordan Love, and Coach LaFleur, I'm very stoked. Didn't expect to get that game. So right out of the box, we're strong. And then we have, as you were alluding to, not only the most Sunday games, we have the most Kansas City games by far of any other network. Now, you could say, well, sure, that's to be expected since we're the AFC network, but we have nine. We have 9 KC games. We're going to showcase these games, including, I believe it's 7 of the last 10 weeks. We have the Chiefs as a primary game. And that includes such matchups as Baltimore at Kansas City. So to have Lamar against Patrick. And then the big one, the game that everyone would want, rate number 1 of all, is Buffalo and league MVP Josh Allen against Patrick Mahomes. It once again, thankfully, is on our air, our schedule. We've had it in the playoffs all these many times. We've had it in the regular season almost every time. So I'm thrilled to be back with that one on week 9 in Buffalo.
Can I take you there to week 9? Because this is a saga. This is another chapter. This is a story that you've told over this decade between these two quarterbacks and these two franchises. To get it once again, and now having the width and the depth of what this rivalry has come to mean, what has it come to mean to you?
Well, it's defined the era in a lot of ways. And there's something special about that. I mean, it's the game that never disappoints. Last year, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson, and I, we got to see it twice, of course, during the regular season. You just had the clip on the 4th and 2 play where Josh Allen ran through the defense and bounced off a bunch of players and won it on a 4th and 2 play to beat the Chiefs that day, 30-21. And then we had the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead, which was a really tightly contested game and could have in a lot of respects gone either way. So, you're alluding to, Joe, that I've had this story, and it's been one-sided when it really counts most of all, and that is for the right to move on in the playoffs, or as it was just a few months ago, the right to go to the Super Bowl. And it's amazing how many times that story of can they ever get over the hump, how sweet that story is in sport. I've seen it over and over again. And normally there is, for that one player or that one team that can't get over the hump, they joyously at some point figure out a way to do it. Most recent example, that would be Rory McIlroy at Augusta National and the Masters tournament. So it's like, is he ever going to do it? Is Josh Allen, and it's not falling on his shoulders. He hasn't done anything to lose these games, but is Buffalo going to find a way to beat Kansas City? I don't know when it's going to happen, but one of these days I expect it will in a very important spot. But in the meantime, you got probably the 2 biggest stars in the game. I mean, I think that's fair to say. Going toe to toe again, it's going to be the first Sunday in November, and that's a game that we mark number 1 on our schedule. That's the one we hope to keep, and we got it, and we are thrilled to death to have it.
We can't wait for that one again. And much like McIlroy, once you've felt all the pain, there's only one thing left to do, and we'll see if Josh Allen can do that when it matters most this season. I want to take you a little bit deeper into November because we have a holiday offering here as well. On Thanksgiving, it sounds like maybe turkey at the Romos, because we're going to take the Dallas for the Chiefs and the Cowboys, and what a matchup that's going to be, intertwined in so many ways, from ownership to management to quarterback. What comes to mind when you see those 2 brand names on the same field together?
Well, I think they're the 2 biggest brand names as far as teams in the NFL right now. Everybody wants to get as many Dallas games on their schedule as they can. And, of course, Kansas City is making a pretty large case for being America's team 2.0. And with Mahomes and Andy Reid and all that, they are a compelling watch every single time they take the field. So to have the 2 biggest brand names in an already highly visible, well-watched window, biggest window of all, it will set records. I mean, that's an early prediction on the season. It'll make the folks in the sales department and the folks on Madison Avenue happy. But the fans will be ready and stoked for it, too, to have Kansas City at Dallas on Thanksgiving. I mean, it's just a monster matchup to be put in that window. And by the way, there's a doubleheader on that Sunday, just a few days later after we depart Dallas. Our crew will be heading to Pittsburgh to see Josh and the Bills take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Presumably the Steelers with Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback and the Steelers being in the thick of things in the AFC North. So we'll see. It's going to be a football-heavy weekend for the Nances, Romos, and Wolfsons and Rickoffs and Michael Arnold, our director, and all of our crew. We like doubling up. We like when we have two big games go from one to the next, and we have it again this year with those two great matchups.
And we know nobody does it like you guys and the team with the NFL on CBS. I've already billed that KC-Dallas one as the show and tell game. One team for this decade has shown us, the other one has told us, and time for Dallas to do some showing as well there in front of the grand audience on Thanksgiving. 11 of our last 12 Super Bowl champions, Jim, have come from 10-1 numbers or shorter preseason. I want to take you past that number to talk about a team that maybe could make some noise come playoffs, because year 2 under Harbaugh always means something special. What is LA's role in the story to be told this season?
Well, they've loaded up at running back, and we know how much Coach Harbaugh likes to run the football. So they've gone through the draft. They got Najee Harris signed in the offseason. They got Joe Alt a year ago on the offensive line. I think they're going to be, I see what you see, by the way. I think they're going to be extremely dangerous. And we have some of their key games. I'm just kind of shuffling through this right now. We've got a week 6 Charger at Miami game on a doubleheader weekend that might be really going to most of the country. And then week 15, the Chargers at Kansas City. We know how big that matchup is between those two. And that's a late season important game. It will be at Arrowhead. And look, in the end, Justin Herbert, I love this kid. I know him quite well since he was in college. And they've reinforced the wide receiver position for him as well. And I think that you're on to something. I think the Chargers are going to be a team to watch.
I point to LA only because they will be the most traveled team in the NFL this season by some 3,000 miles, 4 times the amount of travel than the Cincinnati Bengals, who will stay closest to home in totality. One last one for the road here, Jim, because the halftime hot dog has taken on a life of its own. The story you tell of your ritual there at halftime, a few bites and then the rest to the garbage. I want to know, is there a hot dog power ranking? Is there a city that just does a dog right?
Well, it's got to be plump, and it's got to be hot, and it's I don't like them when they're just dried out. So Kansas City does a very good job. Of course, I get a lot of chances to try the hot dogs there at Arrowhead. We get a lot of their home games. Interesting, in Green Bay, where we'll be week 1, they don't serve us hot dogs. They serve us bratwurst on a hot dog bun. So I feel a little bit off, to be honest, when I to the third quarter, because I'm not a bratwurst guy. I mean, I'll have it, but it's not the same effect for me as having a half a hot dog. So what you're alluding to here, for those who don't know, I don't eat a hot dog at any point during the year except at a football game, because I feel like that's supposed to be part of the experience. And I'll eat 2 or 3 bites and maybe get 2/3 of the way through the hot dog, and I'll throw the rest of it out. I look forward to that ritual. I do. So, we'll be on the hot dog tour this season, Joe. Thanks for reminding me.
Of course. Abe Froman is the sausage king of Chicago, but you are the king of the NFL on CBS. Jim Nantz, we cannot wait for another season. Also wishing you the best on the call this weekend down at Quail Hollow. Lots of exciting action in front of us.
Yeah, we got a big weekend. This is obviously the second major of the year, and it's fun to take a little mental time out. As I said, I get giddy looking at the NFL schedule, but I am supercharged and stoked about this weekend here in Charlotte to be able to call this major, with Rory coming in off the Masters, Scotty Scheffler coming in after shooting a zillion under par in Dallas, Justin Thomas on fire, Bryson DeChambeau playing so well in every major and recently winning. It's going to be a great weekend, but the NFL season, it's going to be here before we know it. And all of us at CBS, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes on politicking. I'm not involved in that role, but starting with David Burson, who leads us, Dan Weinberg, our team goes through this in every single game for weeks and months. I'm sure it's similar at the other networks, but our guys really live it for so much of the year, trying to get the games, trying to build the schedule. And today is Christmas for them. And I think they're very happy with what Santa has brought them.
Appreciative always of the hard work behind the scenes and appreciative of your time. Jim Nantz, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. See you all. All the best.
Again, a massive thanks to the voice of the NFL on CBS. None better than our guy, Jim Nantz. A look at some of the best games CBS has to offer you this season. It begins week 1 as we take to the north. The Lions and Packers from Lambeau. Beware the bratwurst. Chargers and Dolphins going up in week 6. Then it's Chiefs, Bills, Chiefs, Boys. Bills and the Steelers coming at you in week 13. A nice cadence to the Bills' schedule. Their hardest games spread out nicely. Give thanks. Football is back. Well, it will be. Every day a holiday when the Shield is here, but we take a look at a big one coming on Thanksgiving and look at your celebration in a more formal sense. Traditional Thanksgiving 3-pack on the way, headline there by the Chiefs and the Boys at 4:30 on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus, and then a hearty helping of leftovers on Friday with the Eagles and Bears. Back in studio, Joe Musso and the 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden. Mac, let's take a look at this holiday offering as the schedule is here, and we have plenty to sink our teeth into.
Yes, sir.
We've already touched upon the Chiefs and the Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day, but this is an identity game for Dallas. By this time in the season, we will have a better idea of what they are, but how does that identity shift with the change in leadership in your eyes this season?
Well, I think to be determined, right? Because there's a change in the rings in terms of the head coaching based on what we've seen over the last few years with Mike McCarthy being the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys. Now under this new regime under Coach Schottenheimer, to be determined, we don't know. But the thing about the Cowboys and how they get things going with their schedule, we were getting an early clear look on what the Cowboys will look like starting week 1 and, of course, throughout the rest of the way leading to that Thursday night game, Thanksgiving Day game against the aforementioned Kansas City Chiefs.
And I could not believe Patrick Mahomes' first time playing in Jerry's world as a professional. It's not the building that matters when you're talking about Pat Mahomes, but it'll be another one he can check off his list. Certainly so when we get the Chiefs on Thanksgiving Day. We are thankful for that as well. We'll also get the Lions and the Packers, and this one has all the Thanksgiving feel. I don't know if it's because I'm a Midwest kid. It's that early game. You're already noshing on something, but these are two teams that are not hanging in the balance, but much is expected of them, and maybe we don't know what they're going to be this year. Do you feel a step back for either one of these franchises this coming season?
Well, I know when you lose 2 coordinators, with the Detroit Lions losing their OC and their defensive coordinator from a year ago, over the last few years, you know, one would think there could be a step back. But when you look at what Dan Campbell has built there in Detroit, just the persona of what that team is, we know one thing they're going to do for sure. They're going to bite your knees off. They're going to fight for 4 quarters, and they're going to gamble in terms of being aggressive in 4th down opportunities. And oh, by the way, they still have their head quarterback in charge in Jared Goff. So I don't think we will see a significant step back. I think it's going to take some time for these guys to get acclimated to the new coordinators on either side of the football. But in terms of the personnel, Joe, they still have a playoff caliber team. When you look at the team on paper, they have the experience, and I do believe they will have championship-like aspirations this season. And the same can be said for the Green Bay Packers, because if you remember a year ago, their quarterback got injured in week 1. He dealt with that knee ailment for quite some time, and he never got back to being the Jordan Love that we visualized we would see in 2024 based on how he finished 2023 season off as well. So when you have Jordan Love, you have their head coach, and that's a talented roster as well. I do believe the Green Bay Packers should have championship-like aspirations because they have that type of talent.
I think fair to say that both teams underperformed to their own internal expectation a year ago. These are two teams, some had circled the Green Bay Packers as that in vogue pick to take the next step. The Detroit Lions were going to be the team standing in their way, and neither of those two things came to fruition. It was Washington and Philadelphia on Championship Sunday. We also got one close to your heart, Bengals and Ravens out of your division.
Prime time.
Bengals going to show up for week 1 this year? I know this is not week 1, but this is around the time of year that they catch their stride.
Yes.
What do you expect from Cincinnati this season?
Well, hopefully we see more of a sense of urgency for Cincinnati. I know we're talking about the Thursday night slate, but the issue for Cincinnati has been getting off to slow starts. The month of September and October, they've been ugly for that said organization. So can they find their stride before the month of November? But focusing on this Thursday night game, Thanksgiving night game. I mean, divisional foes, two teams that know each other extremely well. And if I'm the Baltimore Ravens, whatever you need to do, make sure you find a way to locate Jamar Chase. Because it's something about the Ravens secondary that Jamar Chase loves. Anytime he faces off against the Baltimore Ravens, he puts up video game-like numbers. He did so last year, and you better believe he's licking his chops at another opportunity to put up outstanding numbers against the Ravens secondary.
I know it's easy to make a prediction here in the month of, what are we, April?
May.
Thank you. I'm always a couple behind. I'm going to make a prediction. That game will be a matchup of the top total defense in the NFL and the top passing offense in the NFL.
I can see that. Yeah, sounds about right.
It's going to be a good one coming up on Thanksgiving night. Then we've got one more on Black Friday. It's the Chicago Bears, and it is the defending Super Bowl champions in the Eagles. When you look at a Black Friday matchup, again, this is the latter half of the season. We're going to know who these two teams are by then, but this is sort of a full circle from last Thanksgiving when it all came apart for Chicago, or at least the final straw that got the coach fired happened. Yeah. It's going to be interesting to look at one to the other, but as you look at what Chicago has done this offseason, is this going to be a team that can play on a similar level to the class of the NFL in the Philadelphia Eagles?
They should. They should. Oftentimes, Joe, when a team has a first-year head coach, you're expecting to see growing pains, right? And I'm not saying I don't expect to see that happen with the Chicago Bears, but I do believe, based on how well they were able to add talent to their team, experienced talent via free agency, and of course adding more talent through the draft, this should be a team that should be able to compete with some of the best in the NFC. And it starts, you talked about how they get the season going and going to this Black Friday game against the Super Bowl champions, the Eagles. I think they got a quarterback. In terms of talent, you don't question that. They got the best, most coveted play caller over the last few years in the NFL in Ben Johnson as their head coach. They've added more talent to the offense. They shored up the offensive line. That was the issue, the biggest issue for their offense a year ago. The offensive line, the lack thereof. They added more depth to the defensive line along with experience. What else do you need, Chicago? You have the hot dogs, you have your quarterback. Last time I checked in Chicago, if you have those two said things, you should be a happy fan base. And that should be the case for the Chicago Bears this season.
More of a beef sandwich city than we are hot dogs, but we do hot dogs well. Just hoping that they can start doing
Chicago
football
style,
well.
Right?
Exactly, in the Windy City. That's Thanksgiving. Let's take a look now at your Christmas Day offering. Cowboys and Commanders, Lions and Vikings, Broncos and Chiefs. It will be a record number of Thursday football games for the Dallas Cowboys, and this one comes on Christmas Day. All right, Mac, last year Christmas was a Wednesday, a clear statement by the league that if it ends in Y, we're playing a game. And this holiday has once again been dominated by the NFL. We love having it on that day. Do you like the setup and the way that things break this year for the Christmas schedule?
Yeah, it's better compared to what we saw last year. Now, granted, both games that we watched on Christmas Day a year ago, they were outstanding. Well, not so much for my Pittsburgh Steelers, but
I told you how that was.
The anticipation was there, and it happened on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, Wednesday. Now, with this happening, Christmas happening on a Thursday, that's more of in the regime of what we've seen, because we have Thursday night games every week of the season when you look at where the NFL stands right now. So it's more about the norm for what we're seeing. And to your point, Joe, we have three Christmas Day games.
Give it to me.
And I'm excited for all of the above. And when you look at how it worked out a year ago, only having two, it was more because it was on Wednesday. With it happening on Thursday, now you go ahead and add one more, which Goodell did, and I'm okay in seeing how it all unfolds for Christmas. So you look at NFL dominating Thanksgiving, as they've done throughout the entire history of the league, for the most part, and now they're starting to dominate Christmas. Every holiday is pretty much going to be locked and loaded by the NFL before it's all said and done.
That's 3 with your turkey, 3 with your presents, and 1 on the day that you sit and shop. The holidays are here, and so is football. Bryant McFadden, appreciate your thoughts as always. We are just scratching the surface here as the schedules are out, and we are diving in. Coming up, some hills steeper than others. We take a look at the toughest schedules the league has to offer. Don't move. You're watching CBS Sports HQ. Fill up the tanks, we're hitting the road. The Chargers certainly are. Located on the West Coast, you know you're going to have some flights, but one to start the season that really adds to their season high total. some 6,100 miles between LAX and Sao Paulo, Brazil. 37,000 miles in total, by nearly 3,000 miles, the most of any team. And you take a look, these coastal teams know what it is to travel, and then you add in some internationals, we better be ready for the road. Always at home when Bryant McFadden is here to offer his thoughts. Mac, before we go to LA specifically, talk to me about travel in the league and maybe how it's evolved from your heyday and what was expected and came with that travel, and what these players experience now in travel.
Well, the flight accommodations are more comfortable. You know, we flew extremely in a unique style and fashion, but nowadays it's revamped. It has intensified in terms of making sure your players are as comfortable as possible, especially for some of the long travel games like the Chargers they're going to embark in on. And for us as players, when I play with the Pittsburgh Steelers, anytime we travel from the East Coast to the West Coast, it's usually around a 4 or 5 hour drive, flight, depending on where you're going. But for us, it only felt like 2 hours because we embarked in card games. So from the time we took off to the time we land, we were involved in card games and didn't realize we were actually in the air for 4 or 5 hours. Now, you had some of the guys that would listen to some soft music, you know, or R&B, whatever the case may be, something melodic, and just take a nap. But for most of us, we found ways to entertain ourselves. So the travel is not as big of a deal as some people make it out to be, especially if you're an experienced player. And when you look at the Chargers, that's a team that has a nice mixture of youth and experienced players. Also, the head coach and Coach Harbaugh. This isn't his first time being in this rodeo. He's been around the block for quite some time, so he understands that he knows exactly how to get his guys mentally prepared for all the travel they're getting ready to embrace.
You and your partner got the good hand. You tell the pilot, do a couple more spins.
Don't land just yet.
About to take this pot.
You're not ready to land.
37,000 miles is what we have on the Chargers, that 6,100-mile trip to start the season in Brazil. When you look at what it means, I know you gave us a sense of the team makeup and how that's going to affect how you deal with the travel, but is there a point of diminishing return where you're just in the sky a little bit too long?
Yeah. Now, the thing about the Chargers schedule, we keep it up real quick, guys, for us. When you look at traveling to New York to play the Giants, usually what we usually see, Joe, when teams travel across country, they usually have 2 games across country where they actually can stay. But with the Chargers, they travel to New York, then go back home to Washington just to travel all the way back down to Miami. That's something that we usually don't see with NFL teams whenever they have to make a cross-country game. Usually it's 2 games in that same preferred destination where you usually stay over instead of traveling back just to travel back again. So that's something that's kind of rare. But like I said, Coach Harbaugh clearly will have a game plan in place for his team to be at their best, knowing they have to make these cross-country games.
Such as life in LA, the second most traveled miles will be
the Rams.
Their neighbors in that city, in the Rams. When you look at the makeup of that team, certainly one that's been presented to us in primetime stages here in the recent past, and certainly one that's used to the travel, but some different pieces in LA this coming season. And Matthew Stafford is getting older by the day, as we all are. The importance of this season and this schedule to keep that travel trajectory in the direction you want it.
Well, the thing about the Rams, when you talk about their head coach, you know how much I've raved about Sean McVay. I think he's the second best head coach in the National Football League behind Andy Reid based on his consistency and being able to do more with less. But the expectations for the Rams at the bare minimum is being a playoff caliber team. You talked about Matthew Stafford. Yes, he's older, but I have yet to see any decline in terms of his production and his leadership on and off the football field. Yes, they lost Cooper Kupp, but in comes Devontae Adams, who had another 1,000-yard season a year ago with 2 organizations. Not to mention, look at some of the health adversity they face.
Yeah.
You lost both wide receivers throughout the course of the season. You lost key contributors on the defensive side. And oh, by the way, your best player walked away in Aaron Donald. That has been an afterthought because they still found ways to be extremely successful without Aaron Donald in uniform. Now, year 2 without Aaron Donald, their defense should be more acclimated, not to mention some of the up-and-coming stars that we saw a year ago.
Yeah.
They have more experience under their belt as well. It's a unique game because you look at week 1 for the Rams, they're playing against a playoff caliber team. that's well coached in the Houston Texans. Two teams right there. When you look at week 1 matchups, I know we haven't really highlight that particular game, but that's a nice game to watch because we do respect either side, not to mention great quarterback play from both sides. And like I said, both teams have the ability to be a really, really good team and most importantly, get into the playoffs. So you look at the first game, and then of course, rookie quarterback Tennessee, Cam Ward comes to town. And then you got another star-studded game against the Philadelphia Eagles, a rematch from what we watched in the NFC Championship game from a year ago.
Had that divisional round.
A divisional round.
I got you.
Yeah.
Taking a look, though, I'm fixated on that first one. I'm just picturing Jared Verse and no Laramie Tunsil and what C.J. Stroud's going to do. And we got to figure out that offensive line for Houston because too much talent there for their quarterback to have been under siege the way he was a year ago, and some young talent on that defensive line of L.A. that has no problem flying the friendly skies.
Exactly.
The Cincinnati Bengals have no such problem. The least travel of any team in the NFL this season, just over 8,000 yards. That's
Burrow, don't do it. Not yet.
It's a good day for Jamar Chase. 8,000 miles, 8,753 to be exact. And this is very much a function of the AFC North being such a tightly knit division in terms of distance traveled. You're going to get 6 games with those teams, and you know where you're going to be, and you're not going to be very far. I know we don't make a big deal about too much travel. Is this an advantage to not travel barely at all?
I wouldn't say that for this particular team because traveling hasn't been an issue for Cincinnati in years past. The issue for Cincinnati has been getting off to horrible starts.
Traveling to the
That's
stadium.
why the month of September, for me, when you look at their games in the month of September, they're overly important because what we've seen from Joe Burrow, what we've seen from Cincinnati, 0-3 starts, 1-4, 2-4, 2-3, nothing above 500. For some reason, they're sleeping at the wheel when week 1 is here. Can they get up to a better start? Because you remember, with everything that was circulating with their program a year ago, they still was almost there of finding a way to sneak into the playoffs with everything that was happening. But if they gotten off to a better start, along with finishing the way they finished in 2024, they might have snuck into the playoffs. So can they get up to a better start? Because if you look at the first game of the season, I think it's against Cleveland, right?
That's your Patriots from last year. It's the exact situation from a year ago. Don't get slapped in the mouth week 1 and you make the playoffs.
Yes, last year when we looked at Cincinnati's schedule, getting ready for that New England game against a rookie head coach and Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback, we all said that should be a win. Well, they proved us right once again in terms of getting up to a slow start. So if you're Cincinnati, who cares about the travel and the lesser miles that you will be embarking in compared to some other organizations? It's about getting off to a better start. That's a winnable matchup. Week 1, Cleveland. Week 2, that should be a winnable matchup as well. I understand there's a new change in the guard of the guard there in Duval, but that should be a winnable game. So those are the most important things that I'm factoring in with Cincinnati. Can we see a different thing happen for them in getting off to a faster start in the first quarter of the season?
They won't have to go far, and hopefully they won't have to go far in the calendar to find themselves as they have in years past. Bryant McFadden, on the road or at home, he's always good.